We're here at a house that we're going to do a little bit of thermal imaging. I've looked at the house on the outside and inside a little bit before, but we're just going to thermal image and go around and show you the kind of things that you'll normally see. So here we're looking at an outside wall corner. You'll notice you can see the studs in the wall and the joists in the attic area. Corners tend to be hotter, sometimes because they have double headers, double studs for support. Sometimes thermal bridging, sometimes it's just because that's a cavity. So if we're looking at that area here and we move over to the other, not at a 90-degree access to it, we can see changes. There's a little bit of changes there. The camera is auto-adjusting with the scale, as we were talking about before. So I'm going to change that over to, if I can get it set up here, I'm going to change the scale so that we have a top temperature of 75 and a bottom temperature of 75 and a top temperature of 91. I'm going to bring that down to like 90. We have previously in this house, the exterior temperature is about 65, 66 degrees. The house, I've turned the heat up to 80 degrees so we can have a good thermal window. And so we're going to stay 75 for the coldest, 90 for the hottest, and see what we get. So just panning around again, ceiling to wall, you're always going to get differentials. Little bit of difference here with the insulation. We're panning around. This is a 4-level, split-level house. And you notice this interior wall here. That's hot. Why is that wall, which is an interior wall, hotter than the exterior wall? We'll find out later. So we go around, going into the kitchen. So moving into the kitchen, typical things you see in the kitchen. Nothing really out of the ordinary. You do see the joists here and you have individual drywall screws that are holding it up. Here's the refrigerator, which we can look under. Refrigerators will normally be radiating heat. This one, the coils are in the back, so it's coming around the side of the refrigerator, and we're seeing the heat from the cooling coils of the refrigerator. Also, typical, where do they put the attic hatch? Right above the refrigerator. Not a good place, but you never know. There's this outside, looks like a 3-season room. We'll go and take a look. It's substantially cooler out here. And so I'm going to switch the scale back to auto because we have it set too high. And here is when you have something like this where you probably don't have a lot of insulation in the ceiling, it's a good idea to look because that's where your water leaks occur. And here's looks like the electrical panel. Let's open this up. Yep, there's your electrical. And taking a look at the electrical panel here, I'll focus it in a bit. And let me take a picture of this just so we can put that on the tape. There's not a lot of heat there. Breakers are all pretty cool. Yeah. And then your meter, with your typical meter box. They're going around now. This is out in Denver, but in the Chicago area, they've replaced all of these with the electronic meters that will report back to the local power company. So here's an area where it's going to the house. So here we have the brick. That was originally a window, but if you notice when they put this thing up to cover it, they didn't do any insulation. So here we have a 76-degree temperature, or 77-degree temperature apparent, whereas the exterior walls are cooler, like 72. So That's the importance of setting up a thermal window. You want to make sure when you get to the house that you have a difference in temperature from the outside to the inside, at least 10 degrees Fahrenheit, preferably 18 degrees Fahrenheit. When you set your span, you don't want to make the span much wider than 10 degrees Fahrenheit because that's going to cause issues. You're not going to get, you're going to see little teeny minor things come across as defects, and that's not a good thing to do. Going back into the house now. Do the upstairs. I went into the attic previously because I don't have a ladder. I just put a chair out. Bedroom, again typical, the exterior walls. Excuse the mess. There's a nice, really cold differential there with the studs. Nothing on the ceiling. Make sure you scan around, looking above you. Second bedroom, again, nothing really huge. Little bit of air leakage around the window framing. It's very common that they don't properly insulate that opening between the window and the window opening. I like to see closed cell foam for that, or sorry, open cell foam for that, but you at least want to stop the air leakage. There's some more heat on an exterior wall. That wall is the sun beating down on it. But we still haven't figured out why we had that hot wall in the living room, even though that was an interior wall. So we'll check that out in a bit. Coming into the other bedroom, again, just your normal air leakage around the windows. Take a picture of that. And we're saving it. The camera is taking a while to save these because it's taking the image and doing that super resolution modification that I told you about, which is pretty much doubling the resolution of the camera. Again, here we have an exterior wall. There you see air coming in from the soffits. And if you're ventilating your attic, that detail is very hard to get done properly because who the hell wants to climb into that small area to adjust the insulation perfectly? You want to have the ventilation for the roof ventilation, but you don't want that ventilation to cool the ceiling too much. I'll show you some pictures later about ice damming and what that looks like. So that's this bedroom. Go down, oh, there's a bathroom in here too we can take a look at. Bathrooms are very important because, again, you got tons of water issues. Look around the toilet. Nothing exceptional. It's always good, though, to double check with a moisture meter. Shower, again, nothing exceptional. The extinctions for the showers and the bathtubs, you want to make sure they're properly sealed and caulked. Very common for water to get there and go through, get into the behind the tile, and the tile falls off. And I will tell you, the drywall job here is not that good. It's got that stucco-y appearance, you know, because the drywallers didn't want to do a good job smoothing it out, so they just made it stucco-y. Anyway, it's a style. People like styles different ways, and that's a good thing. Going down from the upper level to the kitchen, then descending down into the lower level. And here we see an HVAC duct in the ceiling going to a register in the bedroom up above that we saw. There's another register. You see the heat, the air loss where the register's at. So the register is not properly secured to the duct, so you're getting heat loss. And because this is in a ceiling floor area, that's not a big issue. It's an issue of losing heat, but not a tremendous amount. So here we have different ducts all doing hot, and the ductwork not insulated. Here's your fireplace. No fires on, nothing exceptional. There's a little heat bloom there on the wall. Again, not so much a defect, just something that's there. We're going down to the lower level. Now this wall here, surrounding the utility room, is that wall that we saw upstairs. I don't know if the light on the camera, there doesn't seem to be a light in this room. But here's where your furnace is at, and your water heater, and they are both vented to the chimney. And they go up through a B vent through the roof. Now, it's hot in this room because I turned up the furnace so we could get a good thermal window, make the inside temperature hotter than the outside temperature. If it was winter, that would be a good thing. If it's summer, you might want to crank up the air conditioning if the outside is hot. That way you get the differential and you get a good thermal window. But here is the part of that wall where it goes up to the living room area. So the heat from this room is traveling up into that area, and that's what's heating that wall. So it's always nice to find these things, even though they're not defects, because they keep you on your toes as far as doing your research and walking around the house with your eyes and with your other inspection skills before you bring out the camera. Further down in the basement, you got 2 bedrooms down here. And you want, in the basements, especially to look at the floors, where the floor meets the wall. I've got some case studies that I'll show you of water intrusion through basements. We got a big panel here, which looks like the plumbing system for the sprinkler system outside. Nothing huge, but you can see the differential in temperature here, 75 degrees apparent to the foundation, which is 71 degrees apparent. So we have a pretty good differential between the interior of the drywall and the foundation, which would be pretty much the same temperature as the outside ground. Again, look around at windows. Look above windows where the flashing's at. We got another bedroom over here. Turn off the light. Go into this bedroom. There's a room here marked storage, but it's locked, so we can't go in there. Again, if you run into something you can't inspect for whatever reason, make sure you note it in your report. I've had a lot of instances where I've had to testify on behalf of home inspectors where something went wrong with the place, where they couldn't get in the crawl space, and they put in their report, couldn't access the crawl space. Later on, there were issues with the floor supports, and as long as you put it in your report that you couldn't inspect it and why, you're off the hook. But again, that's not a reason not to try. Again, we got more ductwork here. It's heating things up. Another duct. And it goes over here, and it looks like there's some leaks in the ductwork. We're a little bit too close to get that focused really well. And that's that little clicking you hear is the camera nuking itself, putting up that little plane in front of the detector so it can normalize all the pixels, and then flips it back down, and you get your picture. Take a picture of this. And there it's processing. And now it says, okay, we saved it as super resolution. So I'm effectively, with a camera that's rated as 320, getting 640 performance out of it. And that's on the images as well as the screen. It's always a shame when you're doing an inspection and you don't remember what the images are, or you're doing the inspection and the image that you see in the screen is not the image that you get on the image that you put in your report. So try to keep them as close to possible as you can be. Let's go outside and see if we can find something outside of the house. Again, here's the floor in the living room, and there we see the ductwork. A little bit cold over there. There's a rug right there, but there's another duct. So as long as the heat is staying in the house, we don't really care. It's still heating the house. It's just heating it inefficiently. And as the runs get longer, you're losing air. And so when it comes out at the end of the register, the air is not as hot as it would be if you had insulated the ductwork. But very rarely do they insulate ductwork on the inside, though it's going to be between floors. We're on the outside of the house now. This is the west exposure. The front of the house faces a little bit off of south, but it's close enough. A good idea to get yourself either a compass or get an app for your phone that has compasses. They're free, so you can always say which side of the house is facing which way. Little hint. So over here we have the air conditioning compressor. And I'm waiting for my camera to warm up. Like I said before, I like this camera, but it takes forever to boot up. It's doing a lot of electrical checking and making sure all the pixels are normalized and all this other stuff. So as soon as it gets done booting, it'll click, stop the nuke, and then start imaging. Some things we can see without the camera here. This window, which was added, they didn't quite do a very good job on the flashing. So there's, if you can get the camera over here to take a look, there's the framing and the brick wall, and they have what looks like some foam in there, but not a lot. But they didn't properly seal it. So moisture, especially in the top corner, get in, run down the window, and you'll see that on the image. I think when we looked at this on the inside, I'll recheck, there was a little bit of coldness on the side. That could be moisture, but it's most probably just because this is not sealed. So if you have air movement, you have not only air movement, but you have humidity movement. This area does not really have much high humidity from what I understand, although the last 2 days it's rained pretty heavily, but it feels very nice. In Chicago, you'd have excess humidity and air can get in there and cause problems. So it's a do-it-yourselfer job. They just put this sheet metal in with screws. It's never attribute what you can to just the guy who did it being stupid. So here's your air conditioning compressor. Again, we're moving heat from outside of the house, inside the house to the outside of the house. So the compressor is all equally hot. All the coils are working properly. Different air conditioning manufacturers will have different sections of the coil sometimes. So you'll see one section out, one section in. But this looks like it's a good air conditioner working fine. There's your brick wall, which looks great. There's the house across the street. That has a direct sunlight on it, the roof. See, 100 degrees. And what I was telling you before about the car and the carport and the radiation, how the heat will move from the area that's hotter to colder. The sky is clear today, and I'm going to image the sky. And the camera's going to come back with temperature is way too cold. So we know it's below at least, well, here it's like -7 degrees, but we point straight up and it goes off the scale. Let's see if we can see the moon. The moon's up. Let's see if I can get the moon right in the thing. Yeah, the moon is registering at 21 degrees. So we are getting a little bit of reflected light off the moon coming into the camera as far as infrared. Go figure. So the rear section here, this was added. They just put it right on the slab. just a 3-season room. The back of the house here, the sun's been up for about 4 hours. Here is the north side of the building, and it looks pretty clear, but I'm going to show you now how if you manipulate the scale too much, you can give yourself defects. I'm going to put the window bottom setting at higher. So I'm closing up the window. And now we're starting to see some of the framing. Bring this window down. So we're making that vent there, that gable vent, because the house was hot. That gable vent now is hot, plus the roof, I guess, is hot, and it's hotter. It's usually hotter in the attic than it is in the house in the summer. Let's see if we can get this down. So I've moved the window, the span, to 62 degrees at the bottom and 94 degrees at the top. And you see now, you can see the framing up in the attic area, which doesn't have any insulation on the outside walls. And you can see there's the vertical framing, and then there's the horizontal, because it's horizontal. It looks like a fiber cement product siding. So that's, again, how you can change the span and the level of the camera, where it's detecting. Stuff that's way too hot and you're not interested anyway, like a roof that's in the sunlight, you don't care. You know it's hot. So you can set the temperature lower than that, and those areas will just show up bleeding white, but that won't give you any information. You already know that it's hot, so you're just trying to get the window into the temperatures that will give you the results that you're looking for. Little differences in temperature. But don't overset it, like I said before, because that way you can create defects that aren't there. Let's move to the east side of the house where the sunlight's coming in. When we were in the 1-bedroom, we saw that wall was hot, and that's probably because it's exposed to the sunlight. So that's an example of solar loading. You also see the soffits here don't have a lot of ventilation. There's only one soffit vent for the whole side of the house. So we're not getting the proper ventilation that we should up in the attic. Let's go through the gate here, go to the front of the house. If I can reach it. One advantage to being tall. So here we are between the two houses. This house is built on somewhat of a slope, so the foundation is different. Don't have any flashing here, which in the Chicago area we'd see a black membrane there to separate the brick from the foundation wall. You do see a little bit of non-professional attempts to fix some cracking. Here we have cracking through the brick, which is not a good thing, and there's cracking in the mortar, which they fixed with mortar caulk. I tend to be a big believer in mortar caulk, not so much with brick veneer houses, because the veneer isn't really holding anything up, so any structural movement is not really that important. But in a full brick or a brick block building or a single waith block building, that can be an issue. And you're always going to get those cracks forming because it's a single waith wall and it's always going to move. So if you find out where the cracks are and you seal them with good mortar caulk, then you're going to be less likely to have them reopen because they'll stay flexible. Move around to the front of the house. So here's the front. Roughly faces south. It's a few degrees off. Nothing unusual again, but that's because the scale is set weird. I'm changing the scale back to about 40 degrees on the bottom, and it auto-adjusted exterior to 150 degrees. So that's not really going to tell us a lot. So I'm moving that down. Adjusting it. There, we're starting to get something we see. It's kind of like with a palette of colors. Older TV shows, when color TV was new, they tended to use what they call primary colors. That's why the old Batman TV shows and stuff like that, they had certain colors that they would do the uniforms and everything on the set, because they wanted to have the greatest differential of color for their filming, to show off that they have color TV. Same thing with this, that if you have a smaller span and all the stuff that you're not interested in is happening outside of the span, then you're just looking at the information that'll tell you something. So here we set it a little bit too low. I'll take that up again. See what we get. And now it's just whitening out, so everything's hot. There we go. See, I'm using the center number here to tell me what the hottest part is. So the hottest part is 119 degrees on the surface of the roof, that lower roof, and the exterior siding is at 98 degrees. So this window here is set at 112. I'm going to bring it down to about 90, no, about 100 actually. And that will give us the best resolution as far as the thermal resolution. So here, the front of the house is very hot because it's in the sun. But let's see if we can see something with the walls. And again, not so much, because this is not really ideal conditions for scanning the exterior. You have the sun going on it. I like to show up early sometimes at inspections, sometimes before sunrise, just to get a chance to look at some stuff, especially for energy audits. So that's pretty much looking at the house. The other things that I notice, my bugaboo with the downspouts emptying directly on the lower roof, it could have been easily taken to a downspout to the side or some other thing. And it's just a detail that most roofers don't know, most gutter guys don't know, because they're not properly trained. Because they make a certain amount of money as a gutter person, so if they're getting paid the same, why should they do a quality job if no one's going to notice except for the inspectors? Or maybe later when the roof in that section fails and you know, they're blaming the roof company. It's what it is. You want to have to do the maintenance, and you want to look for the little things as well, because your primary job as a home inspector is protect the client from liability. If there's no problems, there's no liability. If there are defects, you want them noted, and whether they're fixed by the seller or fixed by the buyer or they have a give back at closing, that's not your concern. Your concern is just to let your buyer, your client, know if there is any liability and help them to manage it.